Day 2 of this great endeavor, and look what showed up. My brand new starting gear. Pretty stoked about that. The way you gotta do it is you gotta knock out this roll pin. Mine was on there pretty good. I was afraid of messing up the starter, but it finally came out. I did kind of do this trick right here where I was wedging the old gear kind of like up in there and then pounding on it with a rag kind of shoved in as the gap right there, just because I was afraid of you know, messing up that shaft that was holding the starter on. But she's good to go. I tried her out. She's running good. She doesn't mix the lick now. She starts right up. The old one was this guy, and it was pretty wore out. The new one is a little bit thicker, I think, but it worked good. I picked this up on Amazon. It was not a Prime item. It was like $5.99, and when I went to my local parts store yesterday, they had actually hanging on the shelf for $3.99. So I didn't even know that was going to be an item I could find. I didn't even bother checking. I just went ahead and ordered it when I was ordering a bunch of other parts. Yeah, it's just a means to an end. So let's see what else we got going on here. I went ahead and bolted down the rest of the body. I took the old rusted nuts that the previous owner gave me and I replaced them with not so old nuts, and I did up some Loctite on them as well. I didn't want to have them seize up on me as fast, you know, because in the 20 years that those bolts have come off and on. I also got my other body bolts right here bolted down. This one was missing, so I had to go ahead and make my own. The only bolt that I had, they're carriage bolts underneath here, and they're a real pain in the butt. I ended up having to wedge a piece of wood right here between the fender and the tire to raise it up as my third hand. But I got it on there. It's a little longer than the others. I'm not too worried about it. I don't think it's going to interfere with the seat at all. Speaking of the seat, it came in. I went ahead and replaced the spark plug. The old one didn't look too bad, but I figured since I don't know when the next time I'm going to actually get around to doing maintenance on this thing, I wanted to go ahead and take care of it. It's an RJ19LM, and I put some anti-seize on it as well. Another thing I did was I noticed that on my diaphragm pump, that one hose clamp, it wasn't holding very well at all. This is a much smaller nipple than the rest of these guys. The rest of these nipples are cast and are much larger, but this one is a pressed-in unit and it's very small. So on that 1/4 inch line, I went ahead and got me a proper hose clamp. Okay, so here's a little status update. I went ahead and got the seat removed from the old mounting brackets. I guess it was kind of their version of a suspension seat. And over here, we have a brand new seat. I picked this guy up for 44 bucks over at Amazon. We're gonna see how well it bolts up, how it compares to, well, it's gonna compare a lot better than that one right there. Looks like it's got multiple mounting points. And if we look at the old one here, I think there might be something we can work with. The only thing it doesn't have the little safety switch. I think we'll be okay without it. Well, no bueno on getting the seat bolted down. The bolt holes, they're threaded on the back side of the seat, just like the last one, and these ones are about an inch or so off from reaching both sides. So I'm probably going to have to go ahead and notch over here so we can slide the seat in, because I kind of like having this adjustment on the seat. I think I'm going to do that on a different day. Yeah, I'm kind of bummed out about it, but we're going to keep moving on. And one of the things I moved on to was the taking the tires off, because I got new tires. Now these guys are pretty simple, just a snap ring, just like that guy right there. Last guy that had them, put them up with quite a bit of grease inside, so it wasn't much of an issue. I think since this one says like Goodyear on it, this was probably the original tire. This guy, I think it was a replacement. I'm not exactly sure what the name brand of it was. Deli tire. These are the, I believe it's pronounced Carlisle. They're the same size as far as like the 15 6-inch rim, but they are an inch narrower than these guys. Like these guys right here are a 15 by 6 by 6, and these guys right here are a 15 by 5 by 6. So they're going to be a little bit narrower. I'm not sure how they're going to look yet on the rim. They may be stretched out just a little bit, but that's okay. I hear that's a thing. Okay, there she sits on her own 2 feet again, up front at least. I got them all on. As you saw, I put a little grease there in the wheel. Then I also put in a little grease on those Zerk fittings. That's actually just the equivalent of one pump. That one was kind of plugged up. It took a little pressure, but it finally gave way. But I did it on the other side too. One thing I am going to have to do for this guy though on this side is that snap ring was pretty loose. It stretched out quite a bit whenever I unbent it. So I'm going to have to keep in mind to grab some snap rings on my next outings. The tires I really like. This thing moves so easy nowadays. And I plan on going ahead and sliming all 4 tires anyway, because I have a feeling that it's going to have a rough life. As far as the stance, be a little bit taller right now. I'm not too sure. We'll check it out here later on, but we're gonna get this seat done up next. Okay, so here's what I got so far. I went ahead and drilled 2 new holes as close to the edge as I felt comfortable with. I'm going to take this rotary file, kind of make them into an oval here, and then I'll file them down, make them look nice. Here's what they look like on the other one that I've already completed. Okay, so this is what they look like now. I got them moved in. Oh, I'd probably say about 1/2 inch or so. They're not pretty, but they're definitely going to do the job. I may have to do a little bit finish filing, but we are going to get the seat on tonight. Alright, so it's been a couple days. I went ahead and ordered a rebuild kit for this carburetor. I knew it was running pretty rough, so I decided to go ahead and splurge on the $11 for the knockoff eBay kit. It's turned out pretty well. I still got quite a bit of play on this shaft right here. Like, I really wanted to take it out, but that pin right there, it did not want to come out at all. Decided I didn't want to destroy it. I ended up taking the spring back here, which connects to that rod right there. It was broke, and once I bent it and kind of connected it, it ran a lot better, but it still didn't do as well. So I went ahead and bent it a little bit more, so there's quite a bit of tension on that spring now. But it's that guy right there, and it's doing a pretty good job of holding it back. It's at wide open throttle right now, and it was just vibrating so much whenever it was idling that I couldn't get it to run right at all. But it wasn't very hard. I didn't film the carburetor rebuild because one thing was I wasn't quite sure what I was doing, and I don't think it would have been a very good tutorial, especially since I give up on this guy trying to change out the shaft. But I'm going to go ahead and show you what I found inside the float bowl and the parts that I ended up changing out. That was everything that was inside the float bowl there. A couple of these chunkers right here. I'm not quite sure what all it was. The gas was just this color right there. It was pretty nasty. Here's part of the what I didn't use on the rebuild kit. This rebuild kit I think covered a couple different carburetors, because as you can see there's an extra seat right here. This wasn't the one that I had to use. It came with a different gasket for the intake that I didn't have to use. This I forget, I believe they were calling it the main jet. I'm not quite sure. The only reason I didn't replace this guy was because I couldn't get the old one out, so it was just stuck in there. I didn't want to mess it up too bad. Didn't quite have a good enough screwdriver to fit the slots, so I just ended up keeping the jet in place and cleaning it as best I could. Basically all I could really do was spray carb clean down the center hole here, and then I'll work a little piece of wire down it. And I was able to see, when you take these carbs apart, you can see through both ends. So it looked pretty clean. I don't know about these side tubes, how clean they were, but the motor's running pretty well, so I'm going to call it good. One thing I wasn't sure was these three pieces right in here. These three pieces, there's like an extra jet of some kind, a little green O-ring grommet thing, and this extra O-ring gasket. I ended up not using them. I couldn't find anything that looked familiar on my carburetor. It's a pretty simple carb to rebuild. I would recommend it for any first timer to go ahead and give it a try. You can find lots of information on them. High flow, one piece carburetor for the Briggs & Stratton. Another thing I didn't use was this was the keeper pin for the float. This is the brand new one, and it was a larger size. It did not fit. I was able to use the float bowl retaining pin because mine was missing. Here's some of the old parts. I didn't bother even cleaning them up. I just threw the new ones in. So this guy I didn't even bother taking apart. I just this is basically like your at the bottom of the float bowl, and I'll show you here in a little bit. That's just kind of the older pieces. This is your top for like your idle fuel mix, and I guess it's a common thing for these things to people to over tighten them and then to break them off, but mine was in good shape, so I probably could have reused that. Now here's the float seat. There we go, it's focused in nice. And as you can see, it's a little deformed there at the tip where it makes that seal, but there was one in the kit, so I went ahead and used that. The float bowl O-ring, this guy had been seeing better days, so I went ahead and replaced that. That was in there. Another thing that was in there is this round knockout cover, and the way I ended up taking it out was it's punched in, so you have to take a file and file out the edges of the aluminum casting, and I just used a drilled through it, and then used a screwdriver to kind of wedge in there and pop it out, because I didn't want to put any pressure against the carburetor. This is out the knockout cover in question right here, and it's kind of hard to tell, but these little indents right here on this side and then on this side as well, I had to go ahead and take a file and kind of file those down, and then I just took a hammer, and it's actually dome shaped when it's brand new, so you put the dome piece in with the dome facing out, and I used a hammer to go ahead and just hammer it in, and it seated pretty well. Here's that fuel idle mixture screw, and then what I believe is the emulsion screw, and then down here is your high throttle screw, and also your nut that holds the float bowl in. When I was tuning it, I went ahead and marked it so I couldn't forget, but that was my low idle speed adjustment screw. And then right down here where I have it marked as high, that's your high speed. This guy right here sets how low the motor will idle. And from what I understand, it's you want these motors to idle about 1100 RPMs at low. So there's actually, that adjustment is just your stop for how slow it'll go. One thing to note when I was taking a look at this guy, this screw was screwed all the way in. So there was no high or low. It just started up and it just ran. It's running a lot better now. We'll fire it up here in a second as soon as I close the garage door so I don't wake up the neighbors. Another thing that was missing was this second screw to hold down the air cleaner. And this is actually a 10/32 piece of all thread. and I'll just cut it to length and put a couple wing nuts on there so that that air cleaner will hold it tight and make a nice good seal for that that carburetor. From watching the videos of these old timers tune these carburetors, having some popping and some misfiring is that's about as good as you're going to get as far as tuning a carb, especially with something with old sloppy linkage like it has. One thing that I need to work on tonight is this little cover. It actually wiggles around, and so I can't tell where. Sometimes is my choke over here, or am I at my choke right now, or is it up there? So I'm going to go ahead and use some epoxy to go ahead and glue it down, and hopefully that'll kind of clear up my confusion of like is my choke on or whatnot. It used to have these little kind of pins, and you can actually see them through the holes right here. Yeah, those all broke off except for like one in the very corner right there. You can kind of see it, but I'm going to glue that down. I gotta get my all thread cut, get my air cleaner on. I got a new air filter for that. Some fun stuff is my tires came in for my rear. I was gonna try to go ahead and just slime the crap out of these guys to make them work, but after airing this guy up and putting a squirt bottle on there, they're dry rotted on the inside right there at the on the sidewall. So these guys are pretty good. They got these once again from Amazon. They're the like OTR Lawn Track. I've never seen a tire that has an 800 number on it. I thought that was kind of a trip. Also, it says designed in the USA, so that automatically just tells me that they're made in China, but not a big deal. I guess these type of tires are actually used on the Kubota tractors. These will really help me out whenever I'm in the field. One spot I gotta mow, I think, is kind of constantly wet, and honestly that property that I'm going to be mowing, it's just full of scrap metal, so I think it's just best that I have a nice thick tire. I'm going to go ahead, get these mounted tomorrow, and put some slime in them. I'm going to try to get my exhaust all snaggled up. I didn't like how that exhaust muffler was rubbing right up on the fuel shutoff screw. You couldn't use it at all, so I took some 1-inch EMT conduit, and I'm going to see if I can make myself a little stack. So I got to figure out how I'm going to do that. So a little bit of welding, but